When you arrest someone, it's over. That person is now yours. Okay? Technically, in the eyes of the state, that person is now literally your slave. Like, you have legally taken their freedom away. You've taken their humanity away. So technically, there are laws against further dehumanization of someone who is in your custody because they are your captive. They are technically, basically like your property. All right, now let's get to the escaped Pennsylvania killer. The manhunt is over. Let's take a look.
Again, I think we were, to some degree, surprised over the course of the last 2 weeks that it had taken this long, even though the search area seemed to be not 10 states wide. You never really were, though. Why not?
Because if you look at the stats, most people who break out of prison are literally arrested within 24 hours, and most of them walking on the road away from the prison. This was a person who had a plan. This was a person who had the intestinal fortitude to undergo many challenges while on the run. His mother told us about a lot of that. But
these are, John, sorry to interrupt. These are live pictures. This is the first we are all seeing of Danilo Cavalcante. He is in custody. John, walk us through what you see here.
Motherfucker wearing an Eagles hoodie.
I see a SWAT team, which
Go
is
Birds!
probably the people who took him into custody. And I see a guy who has a change of clothes that we're not familiar with, which is a new sweatshirt and a dark pair of pants.
Bro.
There were reports that...
Bro. Him wearing the Eagles sweatshirt is perfect camouflage. His main problem is that I think as a Brazilian, he didn't realize that all he needed to do was eat horse manure. And then everyone would have thought he is an authentic Eagles fan and would have been like, oh, this isn't our guy. If he only knew that all he had to do, the only thing standing between him and permanent freedom was just like dabbling a little bit on the ground and trying to immediately eat horse manure in front of the cops, he would have been able to get away with it. Silly. Eagles hoodie, on the other hand, is a perfect camouflage for trying to evade law enforcement, especially because every Eagles fan is pretty much psychotic. So even if you're behaving in a suspicious manner, cops will go, oh, that's just the Eagles fan. The more suspicious you behave, the more cops will think you are genuine.
That a backpack was found overnight that had things in it, clothing items and so on, that may have been his. Is that possibly what spurred them into a certain area? But he has been doing these kind of home invasions and burglaries and garage, siftings, trying to find different outfits to keep changing his appearance. And, our last reporting was he was shirtless. So he clearly has had these stashes while he's hiding out, but you can tell even as he's walking, he's a guy who's worn down from this flight.
We've talked about the scale of the federal and state resources. What we're looking at right now, you mentioned it's a SWAT team. Do we have any sense of who there's different uniforms along with the SWAT officials that are there, who we're looking at, why there are so many of them?
Well, I think, number one, every SWAT team in Pennsylvania, give or take, had contributed people to that, as well as the FBI, the ATF, Customs and Border Patrol, a lot of specialized units, the FBI's operational technology.
Why are they, they're cutting off his shirt right now. Why would they be cutting off his shirt?
They're taking it off because they're saying, you do not deserve to wear our garb. That is our garb. You don't deserve it. You didn't even eat the horse manure.
Could be for purposes of identification, meaning...
take the tattoo on his back.
He's known to have, specific tattoos, and they want to be able to confirm that they have not just a guy wandering in the woods, but the guy.
I'm going to bring Danny Freeman in as well on the ground. And Danny, as I bring you in, we're just learning that this reverse 911 call has gone out to people on the ground, telling them the search for Danilo Cavalcante is over. The suspect is now in custody. Remember, this was a community terrorized by this, told to stay inside. and authorities want them to know that he is caught.
That's absolutely right. And remember, it's not just this immediate community that we are in right now in South Coventry Township. It's really the entirety of Chester County. I mean, and quite frankly, many of the neighboring counties as well, who have been on edge for 14 days since this inmate escaped. And just looking at some of these live photos, Poppy, I mean, this is the moment that so many in law enforcement have really been waiting for as well. They've been waiting for the moment that they could bring him into custody. I'm sure they are glad that we have aerial footage of this whole process taking place. You can see Pennsylvania State Police down there, and you can see some of those enormous assets as well that have been brought in over the course of this investigation, especially in the past 48 hours when there was this truly intense show of force after that revelation came out that Cavalcante did indeed get his hands on a rifle. But no doubt, like I said before, we've been out here at this particular intersection on the corner of the northeasternmost part of this perimeter, just as I keep saying as well, a few miles, it seems, from where helicopters are watching Cavalcante from above. And folks have been applauding. There have been honks towards these troopers. There is definitely a sense of relief and, frankly, thanks that Pennsylvania State Police and this entire state, federal, and local law enforcement apparatus has been able to apprehend Cavalcante here.
John, I just want to go back to what we've been watching on screen here, because I think it gets to what you suspected might be happening. Not only was his sweatshirt and his T-shirt taken off, cut off, it also seemed that he didn't have his pants on either, wasn't completely naked, and then they were taking photos. And you think that's an identification of markings or tattoos or just confirmation? Exactly.
And I mean, there's another step to that. They have his biometrics, so they have his DNA because he's been a prisoner. They have, his prints. But these are the immediate identifications they can make to make sure that they have a person who fits the unique characteristics, if not the biometric characteristics of the person they're looking for.
If you're just joining us, I want to reset the breaking news. You're looking at live pictures of the capture of escaped fugitive Danilo Cavalcante, convicted murderer who's been on the lam for more than 2 weeks. And these are aerial images of just an enormous SWAT team taking him down, cuffed, putting him into this van, cutting off his shirt as they identify him. With us now, former Supervisory Special Agent Scott Duffy joins us. Context of this, you did something very similar in 1999 with an escaped killer on the run. What are your thoughts as we wait for this press conference?
Oh, good morning to you both, and thanks for having me on. I'm telling you, I'm feeling the same chills just watching the same thing that everybody's watching, and brings back all of the flood of emotions from 1999. The fact that he is caught, the fact that from what I gather, nobody injured, it's fantastic. And to have taken him into custody is just, there's a lot of emotions. And as I saw all the different vehicles kind of rushing out of the scene, trying to head to wherever they're going, they're all.
The only reason why no murders happen is not because of the cops. And make no mistake, this guy is a murderer, okay? The only reason why no murders happen is because he chose not to murder. If he chose to murder, in this fucking 14-day run, he could have had a way better KDA, okay? Like a way better KDA. The idea that this is a celebration for law enforcement is so insane. You know what I mean? He broke in the motherfuckers' houses like while they were sleeping left and right, dude. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
All feeling the same thing, that one moment of elation, just bringing calmness to a ravaged community. And they're probably all heading to put eyes on him, to say, this is who we've been looking for the last 2 weeks. So it's a tremendous celebration, especially with all that is being said. The professionals got him. They took the fight to him, and they took him into custody without incident.
Can you describe kind of the combination of anxiety and intensity that would be felt just before this moment? Like how these guys were feeling, the law enforcement that you're looking at on the ground, over the course of the last several days, especially when they found out he was armed.
Yeah, that just raised the tensions to a whole new level. Law enforcement is on high alert, right? And so everybody's looking up. They're looking 360. But then to have confirmation that he took a gun and that he is armed, just send that acute awareness to a whole new level. So you have the neighbors that are locking doors and doing everything shutter in place, but law enforcement is out there and they are searching day and night, especially with the storms last night. But to be able to zero in on him, from what I gather, get the right people in place, the tactical units, it's game over. And especially to be able to walk him to a police car. There's just no words to describe. Law enforcement is that high is still very high. They're all on cloud 9, and will be for some time.
John Miller, I want you to weigh in here. This is
He's like, the only time they ever feel that way is when they execute an unarmed black teenager.
Press conference at 9:30. Your thoughts?
It's like law enforcement only gets to feel this way when they run over a pedestrian at a fucking red light that they're blazing through without their sirens on. You know what I mean? As they're drunk driving. The only way they can replicate this high is by beating the shit out of their partners. This is one of the few instances where, like, I admit, if law enforcement is operating to a T and doing the fucking job and doing it expeditiously, okay, then yeah, it's a very tough job. This is the one instance where they literally are supposed to be like a somewhat brutal force, right? Who reacts fast, swiftly, gets into action. No fuck-ups. Still took them 2 goddamn weeks, bro. Nuts. But hey, at least they got him. So that we can watch this Glaze coverage.
Oh, this is reflective of other manhunts we've seen, and other manhunts we've seen in Pennsylvania. It's really interesting because these are fairly rare occurrences. But in just the past recent years, you had the case of Eric Frein, a domestic terrorist who opened fire on Pennsylvania State Police. That was a 48-day manhunt through the woods using the same tactics, many of the same people. It ended in a terrible shootout where the face of this investigation, the voice of this investigation, George Bivens, the lieutenant colonel from the state police, said this was the most intense gun battle he had ever seen in his career. Much more recently, in July, we had the case of Michael Burnham, a survivalist, a former military man who went into the woods. That lasted about 10 days. And you see the marshals, the U.S. Marshals. They are in the manhunting business. The state police, they've been through this, as our agent was just describing, multiple times in very similar dynamics. In some way, this is a familiar ending for them, much better than in the Frein case, and similar to the Burnham case. But I think these things have brought them closer together as a team.
Can I ask you what they're doing right now? So I had expected them to put him in the van. Is that even the right term? Close the door and go. Are they interrogating him right now? Are they asking him questions? What are they doing in there right now with him?
I don't think that they can get too far.
They're taking photos, apparently. They literally apparently took fucking photos with
Far
him.
Into the interrogation, except for the public safety part of it, which is, anything that would constitute an immediate threat to somebody else, because as we've talked about before, he's represented by a lawyer. But I think they're probably settling more on where are we going, where are we bringing him, are they ready,
Well, that's a good point. Are
like
they
that.
ready to take him in wherever we're taking him?
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Danny, and for those of you who are watching on the left, it's just moments ago when we saw Daniele Cavalcante, who was led in handcuffs in what looked to be different clothing than we had seen earlier in the week. We knew he had changed clothes. in handcuffs to the picture where on your right, where he has been now loaded.
Bro, there's literally no industry, no sector outside of CEOs and politicians where they fuck up regularly, do a shit job, and then when they fix their prior fuck up, way later down the line, we are supposed to sit there and be like, thank you so much. I often make this comparison to like a fry cook at McDonald's. If a McDonald's fry cook was somehow giving like straight up Ebola, okay, or E. coli, or whatever the fuck, to like a decent chunk of the people that attended the McDonald's, they would be arrested, okay? They would like literally go to jail. They would go to fucking permanent jail. You know what I mean? There is no world in which that person would be left on the job and then, you know, a week later, after like hundreds of people got fucking diseases, he started not giving people diseases after a week. And everyone was like, oh, that's fine. Let's celebrate this guy. He finally did it. Best ever question at the press conference after his arrest.
Sir, was there any concern that he would team up with another small man to step inside of a trench coat, Little Rascal style?
No.
What?
Sir, was there any concern that he would team up with another small man to step inside of a trench coat, Little Rascal style?
Was there ever any concern that he would team up with another small man and hop into a trench coat, Little Rascal style? Is the question that somebody fucking asked.
No.
Look at the police press briefing after they caught him. I mean, they get to flex because this is their moment. Fair question. Wow. Your reaction to that question determines how like short king phobic you are and whether you consider men of shorter stature to be real human beings or not. That's all this is proving to me, in my opinion, in my honest assessment. Which side are you on? The fuck do you mean, which side am I on? I am a defender of short kings and a hater of manlets. You know this.
In handcuffs into that law enforcement vehicle before being loaded in. His sweatshirt and pants had been removed for what we believe, at least according to John Miller.
Yeah, this part is pretty funny. Cops do their job for once and not even good at that, 14 days. And they flex so hard. Like, brother, just do your job. Just do the job. You already get paid like you're doing that job every fucking day. And like everybody lets them have it too. They're like, oh, thank God they did it. They did it. They did it.
Look to be identification purposes, still waiting to see where he will head next.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Colonel. It is a true pleasure to stand here this morning and talk to all of you about bringing this manhunt to a successful conclusion and without getting anyone else hurt, most importantly. None of this would be possible without the support of this team represented by members of various agencies standing with us up here, by others standing throughout this fire hall, and by still more who are out there in the field. So let me give you a few details about how this unfolded. As you know, we have been working most recently in a perimeter established in northern Chester County. Last night, shortly after midnight, a series of events started to unfold. First, we had a burglar alarm at a residence near Prizer Road within the perimeter. Our people investigated that, did not find Cavalcante there or anyone else, but it started to bring some of our people into that area. We had been searching an area not far from there already with some tactical teams that night. There was an aircraft overhead utilizing FLIR technology, and close to 1 a.m. picked up a heat signal that they began to track. It was west of PA 100 and north of Prizer Road.
We have so much fucking
Tactical
money.
teams began to converge on that location where the heat source was moving. Unfortunately, we had a weather system that also came in, and we had lightning that was flashing all around, and it caused the aircraft to have to depart the area. Tactical teams made a decision to secure that area, that smaller area, as best they could, and hold it through the storm and until we could bring additional resources in and bring aircraft back overhead to ensure that we did not have an issue with an escape. That resumed early this morning, and shortly after 8 a.m., tactical teams converged on the area where the heat source was. They were able to move in very quietly. They had the element of surprise. Cavalcante did not realize he was surrounded until that had occurred. That did not stop him from trying to escape. He began to crawl through thick underbrush, taking his rifle with him as he went. One of the Customs and Border Control teams, BORTAC, had a dog with them. They released the dog.
BORTAC is the SWAT team for ICE. They are the ones that operate outside of any kind of legal scrutiny, and they are able to operate. They were the ones who did the van kidnappings at Portland during the Trump administration. They are allowed to operate within 100 mile of any border or part of the sea. Okay? Which means they are able to operate pretty much in every part of the country where people live. Any coast or direct physical border, 100 miles in, is BORTAC Constitution free zones. That's what the ACLU calls it. And I believe 100 miles of an international airport as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, BORTAC doesn't have to wear insignia. They quite literally are everywhere. Unlike other federal agencies, Customs and Border Patrol officers are uniquely granted extraordinary and unprecedented powers, which mean they can racially profile, stop, frisk, detain, interrogate, and arrest anyone without a warrant or reasonable suspicion. The Fourth Amendment is intended to protect all people against unreasonable searches and seizures. Every other federal law enforcement agency except Customs and Border Patrol requires either a warrant or reasonable grounds for an officer to act without a warrant. Border regions are often treated as zones of exception for human rights and civil rights, laying the foundation for abuse, not just along our nation's borders, but across the country. This is why the ACLU considers the 100-mile area to be Constitution-free zones. These guys are heavily armed. They look like military. They train with military, and they can do whatever the fuck they want. They operate in areas where 80% of the entire population of the United States lives. For the record, the 100 miles into the border quite literally is where 80% of the entire nation's population lives, okay? So just so you understand, I know Americans think land votes, but it certainly fucking doesn't, okay? Look at this. Okay? All of this is 20% of the population. All of this is 80% of the population.
Some of our PSP CERT members were also there, had him surrounded. The dog subdued him, and team members from both of those teams immediately moved in. He continued to resist, but was forcibly taken into custody. No one was injured as a result of that. Excuse me. He did sustain a minor bite wound. We had medical personnel at the scene, and they took a look at that. Cavalcante was, as I said, taken into custody. He was transported to our Avondale station for further processing and interview, and he will ultimately be transferred to a state correctional institute where he will be housed and begin to serve his life sentence. In just a few minutes, I'll open this up to some questions, but before I do that, I want to turn this over to one of our very close partners, District Attorney Deb Ryan. I know she would like to say a few words, and again, then we'll be happy to take your questions following that.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens. Today is a great day here in Chester County. Our nightmare is finally over and the good guys won. We owe a debt of gratitude to all of the first responders for their tireless and dedicated efforts in bringing this fugitive to justice. They worked around the clock, and we are...
Chat. Come on. I love crime, but like this dude is a fucking murderer. Like he's a murderer twice over and an international one, as a matter of fact. Like, it's nuts. He should have never been able to escape prison by crab walking from an area, a tower, that a prisoner had escaped from literally like 2 weeks prior. It's not that Chad is not riding the murderer, but they're getting mad at like this woman being like, oh, the good guys won, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but they did. You know what I mean? Technically, this is a bad guy, and these guys are the good guys in this situation.
We are deeply grateful to all of them. Our community can finally regain its normalcy and breathe a collective sigh of relief. This would not have happened without the collaboration and efforts on behalf of a multitude of agencies. I need to thank the Governor, Colonel Paris, Lieutenant Colonel Bivens for his unflappable and dedicated leadership, the U.S. Marshals, the Chester County Detectives, the FBI, U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, the Department of Emergency Services, the Sheriff's Department, and every single person who went out into the field in the most horrendous conditions. We had weather problems, we had terrain problems, and a ton of obstacles that prevented our capture from occurring as expediently as we wanted. We have the best people in the business, and we never lost faith that this capture would occur. We knew that it was just a matter of time. The scope of this manhunt was extremely impressive. The brave men and women who went out there every single day are our heroes, and I am proud to be a part of this.
2 weeks. That's all I'm gonna say. 2 weeks. The only reason why murders didn't happen was that luckily this dude, who is a murderer, was like somehow not doing murders. I guess the other murders he's done in the past that got him arrested were directional. I think it was his ex-wife. When we do a good ass job in my industry, we don't get to suck our own dicks at a press conference. Yeah, because you're not cops.
Collective team of people who worked around.
He murdered his girlfriend because he thought she was going to report him for his first murder in Brazil.
The clock to bring this man to justice during this monumental challenge. They utilized every piece of advanced technology, dogs, drones, helicopters, every asset available was put out for this capture. I can't express our gratitude deep enough to all of them and to the community for their support. We received dozens and dozens of donations, well wishes, and kind support from everyone in the community, and we thank this firehouse for housing us. We know we disrupted their lives for a while. One of the first calls we made upon learning about this capture was to the Brandow family, who, as you can imagine, had been living in a complete nightmare. They are so grateful to the men and women who helped with this capture. They can now finally sleep again. I can't thank law enforcement enough for their efforts. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will be happy to take your questions. Yes.
With the helicopter overboard, we saw.
If only we could figure out how he escaped to begin with. Like, I don't know if it was on camera or something, so we could like assign the blame. Well, can't really do anything. He was a Brazilian wood elf, you know what I mean? He had magical powers. that allowed him to just pee-pee poof away from prison. Crazy. So thank God cops were there to salvage the situation that fucking other cops caused.
The arrest taking place, there was some criticism about the photo op that was taken with the fugitive. Can you explain how that's actually a standard procedure, or what's the reasoning behind the photo op with the fugitive?
You know, I'm aware that there was a photo op.
Yeah, they took a photo. They posted up on him, and they took a fucking photo, and now the media is mad at that. Honestly, look. This is probably very gross and most likely illegal. Not that it fucking matters. But like, I am a firm believer that, like, okay, the dick sucking aside, like, it kind of makes sense that they wanted to take their little fish photo. You know what I mean? It's a war crime to do that in combat law. Yeah, I know. No, I know. It's dehumanizing. It's fucked up. And they most likely will. I mean, in a normal situation, you would get punished for it, because ultimately he's still a human being. Exactly. But having said that, I do understand why they did that. Like, I understand the human side kicking in, where you're like, oh shit, I want to take a photo with this guy. Didn't even take photos with Osama bin Laden. Yeah, because, you know, there were some other reasons as to why I'm pretty sure they were not allowed to, or those photos never made the light of day.
That was taken out there. Those men and women worked amazingly hard through some very trying circumstances. They're proud of their work. I'm not bothered at all by the fact that they took a photograph with him in custody. Again, they're proud of their work. They kept the community safe. I say thanks to them and good job.
Why is it dehumanizing? This person is now your like okay. When you arrest someone, it's over. That person is now yours. Okay? Technically, in the eyes of the state, that person is now literally your slave. Like, you have legally taken their freedom away. You've taken their humanity away. So technically, there are laws against further dehumanization of someone who is in your custody, because they are your captive. They are technically, basically like your property. Okay? They do not have the capacity to escape. They do not have the capacity to push back. Yeah, they're posting with him like they caught a fish. You know what I mean? They're doing the fish photo. Okay? Now, the larger implication is that taking photos like this one, of course, further dehumanizes people, and an entire culture that, like, justifies this kind of behavior because he's a bad guy. And I don't think anyone is fucking disagreeing that he's a bad guy. That society justifies further cruelty and subjugation to all manner of prisoners who deserve human rights. You know what I mean? Because you can do whatever the fuck you want to someone who is your captive. So many people are saying they should have killed him. Yeah, that's not how that works. The restraint that they showed was actually good, for the record. I will admit that. The fact that they didn't actually murk this dude was very good, especially because he was armed. He was known to be armed. He's a murderer. The fact that they were able to restrain him and detain him without actually murking him is a good thing. That is what you're supposed to do. They're doing the fucking job. They're doing the goddamn job, okay? Cutting his clothes off, including his pants, and then the nude was the weirdest part? No, that's not that weird. No. I don't think that was specifically dehumanization. At that point, you're doing it for multiple different reasons. You're doing it, one, like the guy on CNN said, to look for identifiable, to verify the identification. Okay, and also for wounds. It's not for dehumanization, chat. It's to fucking no. It's not even for hidden weapons and shit. No, they're doing it for wounds too. Again, I have to explain this again. Okay, remember, this person is now your captive. Okay, this person is now your captive. You're not going to take his fucking handcuffs off, obviously, duh. That would be really silly, especially because this motherfucker's slippery, okay? So they have to take his clothes off to make sure that he doesn't have any wounds that need to be treated, okay? How are they going to take his clothes off when he has handcuffs on him? When someone is your captive, they are your responsibility. So technically, them stripping him of his clothes by cutting it off of his body is actually the right thing to do in that situation. I don't think that was like out of, I don't think that was out of bounds. Taking a photo with him, however, is. Because it's, the taking a photo of him in that situation is definitely dehumanization. And it's done, it's just like this person is no longer a human being. And a law enforcement that behaves that way should not be celebrated. I'm saying, like, I understand why they did it. But I do recognize that it's still quite a fucked up thing to do because, this is an indication that our law enforcement doesn't behave like they are treating humans, even if they are gross, psychotic human beings. Okay? The duty and the responsibility is to treat that person like a human, no matter how gross their crimes are.
Sir, did he say anything in the moment that he was captured, and you released the name of the canine officer who bit him during his capture?
We will probably not be releasing the name. And in terms of anything that he said, we need to use an interpreter, and he has been taken back to the station, and at that point, we will attempt to interview him at the Avondale station.
Did he say anything upon capture? Anything at all?
I'm not aware of it. If he did, I don't have that information yet.
Your officers were authorized to use lethal force if he didn't actively surrender. Was the goal to always take him in alive?
That's always our first choice and preference.
Cap.
Again, that option is only to prevent the escape of a very dangerous individual. Had they not been able to contain him, that would have remained an option.
Who specifically made the arrest? Which organization?
It was a combination. It was a combined group of the Border Patrol and PSP.
At 1 o'clock captured. When he went into the van, he was stripped and had his tattoos photographed. Is that normal procedure?
Yes.
When the thermal imaging happened at 1 o'clock, was he in the same location when you found him?
Wait, I'm sorry. You'd ask first, man.
Was he asleep when you found him?
He was proned out. I've not been told that he was asleep. I'm told that he was proned out trying to hide and then began to crawl away.
Was it the same location when you got the thermal imaging at 1 when you found him at 8?
It was in that close proximity to that, yes.
What was it so whether anyone was helping him?
No one was assisting him at that point.
Sir, what was the agency that was flying the helicopter that first spotted the key?
That was the DEA, and that was a fixed-wing aircraft.
Were you worried as law enforcement that you had to down the plane and there could be another chance for escape? I mean, that's obviously the plane had to land, but what kind of risk did you have to calculate with that?
Well, as I've told you throughout this investigation, there are always things we have to contend with. Everything isn't scripted and doesn't go perfectly. And so it's just another challenge. Worried, I don't think, is the word that I would use. We simply had to adapt. And so we secured that inner perimeter while always keeping our outer perimeter secure, so that if he did manage to get out of that inner, we would box him in yet again.
How tough an adversary was he? You've led some very high-profile, difficult manhunts. How tough an adversary was he compared to some of the others?
I don't know that he was particularly skilled. He was desperate, and I've said that all along. You have an individual whose choice is go back to prison and spend the rest of your life in a place you don't want to be, or continue to try and evade capture. He chose the evade capture. He was in good shape, obviously able to climb, as you saw, to get out of prison. But ultimately, as I said all along, we had an amazing team assembled here, capabilities that are just very formidable. And I was confident all along that he would eventually be captured, and ultimately this team, and I credit all of them for bringing together their collective experience.
The cops are geared to fuck out. It looks like an Army unit. Yes, because it is functionally an Army unit. It is a federal law enforcement agency under the banner of Customs and Border Patrol. Some of them have police tags on. Others, if you might notice, don't have any tags on. That is because they don't have to legally wear tags. They don't have to wear anything, as a matter of fact. They do not have to even tell you that they are BORTAC. They are completely above any kind of Fourth Amendment rules, as I described already. They are a part of the CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. They are the Border Patrol Tactical Operations Team. They are basically the SWAT team for Border Patrol, and they operate in areas that are 100 miles from any border or sea line. It's terrifying.
The resources and being able to apply that and capture him. It's never easy to find someone who doesn't want to be found in a very large area.
Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah. How are Dems not getting rid of this? Do they approve of it? What do you mean? There's no... Brother, police are already fucking dog shit in this country. Okay?
Yo, you hear how...
Police are already fucking dog shit in this country. BORTAC is getting so much good coverage. They got a bunch of bad coverage under the Trump administration when Trump sicked them on people in Portland. But they're getting so much good coverage. Like, it was a BORTAC guy in Uvalde. Or not Uvalde. Or was it Uvalde? You've never heard of BORTAC? Yeah. Because, one, you're probably not in here when I've covered it. And two, that is by design. The reason why you don't know about it is because you shouldn't know about it. If you know about it, then you're going to be like, what the fuck? There's a secret police that is like literally trains overseas, by the way. A secret police of like former military people that are completely above the law and can literally racially profile you legally, can detain you legally without any reasonable suspicion. Okay? Yes, they are the domestic special forces. That's fucking terrifying. There's a reason why nobody actually talks about it all that much. Because if more people were aware of it, they'd probably be a little bit more scared of it. And usually the only time where you actually hear about their operations is when a BORTAC guy actually ends up doing something that cops are supposed to be doing, but they don't fucking actually end up doing. So it's up to the BORTAC guy to like actually go in and rush to the line of fire. So they do get relatively positive coverage in general.